So I'm going to talk about how we're too slow as an industry. I'm going to do that by talking very, very quickly. No, I'm not. So the pace of change in Silicon Valley is kind of phenomenal. This is the first thing that I saw when we got there. It's a lovely ad. Your data should belong to the NSA. Very controversial. Who is this by? BitTorrent. Now, most of you probably know BitTorrent. They're kind of the engine of the, let's call it semi-illegal, mainly illegal downloading industry, and yet they've gone from a position of being a nascent technology to having a huge user base, and now they're commercialized to the extent that they're advertising. And that just shows how quickly that's happened before arguably the legal system has caught up with them. So back onto us. So the comparison here is 3 days versus 3 months. So in Google Creative Labs in New York, they work to a 3-day turnaround time. I think 3 months is a kind of rough estimate for how long we as an industry take to turn around big large-scale campaign work. And I actually think 3 months, when you say that to most people, they think, God, that's actually pretty tight. So I'm going to show you the first ever Google ad, and I'm going to show it to you because I hate when people talk about examples, we don't show examples, so that's the first reason. And second, because I think it's just one of those kind of planners ads, so let's have a look at this. There it is, the human inside the technology, which comes back to Sophie's point. So I'm not going to talk about the ad, I'm going to talk about how they actually did it, because I think that's the important thing. I wanted to give you a solid example of how we can actually speed up. So the things that they did, they didn't wait for a brief. There was no brief for that project. The Creative Labs came into Google, and one of the first things they thought is, this is an amazing company, but where's the soul? What does this mean for people? Which inspired that piece of work. It was very tight. It was a 3-person team that worked on that. They took 3 days to turn that around. They actually made it, and I'm going to talk about this idea of prototyping in a second, but we won't get lost in that. And they got it out there, so they sent it out to Larry and the rest of the board, who really liked it. They sent it on to the rest of the company. An email comes back saying, hey, this is great, we're going to put it on the Super Bowl. And the rest is history, so it went on to the Super Bowl. So I think there's learnings there just in how we work, and I think that not waiting for a brief is really important. I think we get trapped inside this campaign paradigm where, even myself, we find ourselves waiting for the feedback or waiting for the brief, and I think we should just push on and create. So let's talk about prototyping, because this is really it's a really interesting idea. What you're looking at here is the first Palm Pilot. Now, the first Palm Pilot had no technology in it whatsoever. It was made out of cardboard. So you're actually looking at cardboard prototypes there. And those prototypes were used to actually sell in the concept of Palm Pilots. So a prototype is the stage before proof of concept. For me, it's almost proof of an idea. And there are loads of different examples of this. And I think we go some way towards this in pitching. But I think actually bringing that vision to life very quickly and selling in the totality of the idea is something that can really help us speed up early on. The next thing is hacking, or the idea of hackathons. We did lots of hackathons with Google in the US, which is great. I've got this example here. So these are the pre-prototype and prototype stages of Google Glass. which is fascinating in itself. But if you look at the far left, that is essentially a mobile phone strapped to a pair of glasses. Now, it obviously sounds quite funny, but the interesting thing there is that is a prototype, and essentially that is the concept. So the concept lived before it was made through that experimentation. We were talking earlier, is a hackathon just a brainstorm? I think the most important thing in a hackathon is taking an idea and saying, how can this technology work and help this idea? So through the generosity of Google, all their APIs are completely open. And when we actually started doing hackathons in that manner, how can maps bring this idea to life? How could YouTube bring this idea to life? You then get into significant time savings because you're not actually building things from scratch. The technology exists there, and any time you're investing is really that added value piece on top. So there are two things that you can do, and there's one last point which I really enjoyed, and it was if you can do anything to really speed up the creative process, and this came from Robert Wong, direct from the Creative Labs in New York, you need to do this. And that is to avoid the nincompoop forest. Now, we're not going to get personal, but I think everyone kind of gets the concept of the nincompoop forest and has come across forest of nincompoops in the past. So just a little bit of fun there, but there's a point there about, I think pitching high and pitching to the right people and being, solid with your idea. And that's it from me, and I'm going to hand over to Sophie again, yeah.